Nii, aitäh kõigile, et te tulite. Tere tulemast meie pressikonverentsile. Täna on meil pressikonverentsil Eesti välisminister Sven Mikser ja Euroopa Liidu välisasjade ja julgeolekupoliitika kõrge esindaja Federica Mogherini. Kõigepealt anname sõna meie osalejatele ja siis saab ka küsimusi küsida. Kõigepealt Sven Mikser, palun.
Aitäh. Tere tulemast, austatud ajakirjanikud. Mul on erakordselt hea meel täna tervitada Tallinnas kõrget esindajat ja öelda, et Federica Mogherini ei ole Tallinnas küll igapäevane külaline, aga see tegemist ei ole tema esimese visiidiga ja arvestades Eesti eesseisvat Euroopa Liidu Nõukogu eesistumist, siis kahtlemata ei jää tänane külastus ka selle aasta viimaseks. Mõistagi on tänane päev olnud ka kõrge esindaja jaoks väga kohtumiste rohke, sinna on mahtunud kohtumised presidendi, erinevate ministrite, parlamendiliikmetega. Meie kahepoolsel vestlusel me keskendusime mõistetavalt Euroopa Liidu eesistumisele, Eesti eesistumise agendale tervikuna, aga erilise fookusega siis nendel teemadel, mis puudutavad eesistumise siis välispoliitilist agendat ja ka laiemalt Euroopa Liidu välispoliitilist agendat Eesti eesistumise vältel. Meil on päevakorras palju põletavaid probleeme, samal ajal ka Eesti eesistumise kalender on tihe ja sündmuste rohke. Me oleme valmis tegutsema kõigil olulistel rinnetel, meil saab olema kindlasti väga tihe ja kasulik koostöö komisjoni ja Euroopa Liidu välisteenistusega meie eesistumise jooksul. Oleme valmis pakkuma eesistujana oma abi, kus siis välisteenistus seda vajab ja teisest küljest kindlasti saame loota ka siis komisjoni ja Euroopa välisteenistuse toele nendes valdkondades, kus meie seda eesistujana vajame. Eesti eesistumise ajal kindlasti Euroopa Liidu kõigi institutsioonide ja liikmesriikide ees seisavad mitmed keerulised väljakutsed, alates siis julgeolekupoliitikast kõige laiemas mõttes, mis hõlmab nii siis Euroopa Liidu lähinaabrust, Euroopa välispiiride kaitset, Euroopa rändepoliitikat, aga ka siis ühist kaitse- ja julgeolekupoliitikat ja selle edasiarendamist ja tõhustamist. Samuti on meie eesistumis välispoliitilises fookuses Euroopa Liidu partnerlused, Euroopa Liidu lähinaabrused. Eesti jaoks mõistagi on olnud pika aja vältel üks prioriteetteemasid Euroopa siis idapartneritega seonduv. Meie eesistumise aega jääb ka Brüsselis toimuv idapartnerluse tippkohtumine. Samuti Eesti eesistumise ajal leiab aset Euroopa Liidu Aafrika tippkohtumine. Mõlema tippkohtumise puhul ka Eesti ise korraldab erinevaid kõrvalüritusi ja kus me keskendume teemadele nagu siis kodanikuühiskonna areng, äri, ettevõtluskeskkond, aga mõistagi ka Eesti üks selliseid bränditeemasid nagu digitaalne ühiskond, e-valitsemine, digitaalne majandus. Nii et Eesti eesistumine kindlasti saab olema suur väljakutse, samas kindlasti ka suur võimalus, nii võimalus läbi selle, et juhtida Euroopa Liidu olulise siis formaadi nõukogu tööd, aga kindlasti välispoliitika valdkonnas, kus ka välisasjade nõukogu juhatamine on ikkagi välisteenistuse ja kõrge esindaja pädevus, on see meile võimalus olla laua taga meie jaoks oluliste teemadega. Aga kuna mina olen Tallinnas mõnevõrra sagedasem külaline, kuigi mitte päris igapäevane, aga Federica on siin siiski suhteliselt harva, siis ma arvan, et ka tänane pressihuvi on seotud eeskätt sellega, mida Federical on öelda ja mõtetele, mida temal on teiega jagada.
Thank you very much. I will not be able to do it in Estonian, unfortunately, so you will have to set with English. First of all, Sven, it's really a pleasure for me to be back in Tallinn. This is my third time in the recent years, and for sure not the last one in next month. I'll come back in June, and then during the presidency regularly to run with you in full partnership our foreign and security and defense policy. I've had today very good, very fruitful meetings with the President, the Prime Minister, with the Minister of Defense, with the Chairman of the Foreign Affairs and the Defense Committee in the Parliament, with you, at length discussions and excellent continuation of cooperation and preparation for the presidency. And I'm going to open the Leonard Murray conference in a few minutes. Let me say this is my second time at the conference, so I'm particularly pleased for this opportunity I have and this honor. I would like to start by saying that Estonia is proceeding with the preparation for the presidency in an excellent manner. It's going to be the first time the country holds its presidency. Having anticipated of 6 months this important event, more than an event actually, this important work at the service of the Union and the citizens of the Union, and in particularly challenging times for both the internal life of the European Union, but also for the international regional situations we're facing. And I have to say we feel in safe hands, knowing that we move from the Maltese presidency to the Estonian presidencies, two countries that have a truly European approach, knowing very well that only being together as a union, we have the relevant size and impact that can protect our citizens in the world of today and have a clear and strong role in the globalized world we are living in. We discussed in particular with Sven the foreign policy agenda that will be characterizing the 6 months of the Estonian presidency. For sure, the Eastern Partnership Summit will be one of the highlights. It is extremely useful and important for us to prepare this work together and together with each of the 6 partners that will be with us. Already in June, we will have the foreign ministers of the Eastern partners joining us in Brussels to prepare the summit, and during the beginning of the Estonian presidency we will prepare the summit together with Sven. I was particularly pleased, he mentioned himself also the Africa-EU summit we will have later in November. This is, I think, also symbolically extremely powerful. The fact that during the presidency of a very Nordic country in the Union, one of the main political focuses of our foreign policy will be our partnership with Africa. And on Monday, Sven will be with us in Brussels at the Foreign Affairs Council, where we will be hosting the President of the African Union Commission. If we want to work on security, counter-terrorism, but also migration and economic development, we have to partner with our closest neighbor and our biggest neighbor that I know from here might not look Africa, but it is in terms of continents. And here, the added value of Estonia, especially in the field of digital competencies, will be particularly appreciated. And then we will have during the presidency of Estonia a very substantial package on security and defense. I know this is top priority here. This is top priority all over the European Union. And this is why we are working now since 1 year to use all the instruments the European Union has in the field of European defense in strong cooperation with NATO. We will be implementing 42 practical projects of cooperation with NATO. Jens Stoltenberg and myself will report on that in June, just before we start the Estonian presidency. So during those 6 months, we will follow up on this concrete actions in the fields of maritime security, cyber threats, hybrid challenges. So this will feature very high on the Estonian presidency program, and the same goes for the operational decisions we will take, hopefully during the Estonian presidency, on the European defence. This can mean permanent structured cooperation, this can mean the use of the battle groups, this can mean using all the instruments the European Union has to take care of the security of its citizens in cooperation with NATO, as I said, not in competition, never, but in a much more effective manner. Obviously, foreign policy in particular is what happens while you're planning things. So we will have also to deal together with any developments that will be arising during those 6 months. And normally we always do have some developments going on. I can say that I'm particularly glad that I will be able to count on good friends and wise friends here in Estonia, starting from Sven and all his colleagues, all the government, to guide the European Union through this challenging but also exciting next months. I will finish by saying we always, and journalists as well, we always focus on the challenges, on the threats, on the crisis. Let me tell you that seen through the eyes of our partners in the world, the European Union in this moment is somehow a point of reference. I know Europeans don't always perceive it this way. I believe Estonians do see the added value of being a union, and I think this is something on which you can help the other Europeans to realize what we have. And we have also responsibility to be a point of reference for our partners in the world, as a credible, reliable partner, cooperative partner that can play a very important role in the world of today. I'll stop here and I'm open for questions and sharing equally with Sven. Thank you.
Thank you very much, suur aitäh. Nüüd on aeg meil küsimusteks ja võtame esimese küsimuse siit. Jah, sina. Ja palun tutvustage oma väljaannega.
Well, first of all, let me say that having adopted the decisions on the sanctions unanimously and having kept that unity for all these years and continuing to keep this unity in the European Union for all these years is not exactly seen as a failure on the Russian side. I was, I think, quite surprised, and these sanctions have an impact on the Russian economy. Let me also add that the Russian economy has problems by itself that derive from other elements but the sanctions. And this is an issue for the Russian authorities to tackle, but a serious issue. Sanctions for us are linked to, first of all, the annexation of Crimea that we consider and we will consider in the future as illegal by international standards, and linked to the conflict in the east of Ukraine. For us, sanctions are not a policy in itself. are an instrument, one of the instruments we have to achieve the political objective we have, which is the end of the conflict in the east of Ukraine, the full implementation of the Minsk agreements. It's only one component of our policy on the conflict in Ukraine, and also is only one component of our relations with Russia. When it comes to our work on the conflict in Ukraine, in the east of Ukraine, we are doing other things that I would definitely not define a failure, such as the strong support to the OSCE work in the east of Ukraine itself. Through the monitoring mission, the European Union is the strongest supporter of the mission and doing a lot of the important work on the ground. That is never enough, because in a conflict it's never enough what you manage to do on the ground, but both on humanitarian aid and on important issues like the mining, it's the European Union behind the positive things that manage to be done on the ground. The other element of our work on Ukraine is a very relevant one. That is the support to the reform agenda of the country. That is also a way of supporting the authorities in Kiev to implement their side of the Minsk agreements, mainly the political side of the agreement, but we also say the security side of the Minsk agreement has also to be implemented, and here we come back to the role of Russia and the influence it can exercise. The Minsk agreement is an agreement that Russia has signed. Its signature is something that should count for the Russian authorities themselves. And this is something we discuss with our Russian interlocutors. I was in Moscow myself a few weeks ago. This to say that beyond the sanctions, we also have a dialogue open, exactly to find ways in which we can help the implementation of the Minsk agreements. And our relations with Russia do not limit themselves to the disagreements and the different views we have on the conflict in Ukraine or the annexation of Crimea. We work constantly with Russia when it comes to some specific files where we see added value in cooperation. I think of counterterrorism dialogue or migration cooperation, or the Nordic dimension and the Arctic, areas where the European Union and Russia and some of our member states still cooperate fruitfully together. Or I think of something that for me is very important, the fact that the Russian students are the first beneficiaries of our Erasmus projects. Keeping our people together, exchanges of our people intensified, is, I believe, a big investment we can do for the future of our relationship, because beyond leaderships, there are people. Having said that, there are also fields of foreign policy, for instance, where we have a channel open. We constantly work together on issues like the crisis in Syria, in Libya, Afghanistan, or DPRK. And there are files where the European Union and Russia see completely eye to eye. I think of the implementation of the nuclear agreement with Iran, or the conflict between Israel and Palestine. So it's a complex relation. It's a relation that, as long as the situation in Ukraine will stay as it is, will not go back to normal. But it is a relationship that also contemplates what we call selective engagement on some issues where cooperation is needed.
If I may just add a couple of words. I would, first of all, respectfully disagree with the basic premise of the question that the sanctions have failed. I do not think they have. Yes, indeed, I've heard the argument before that since Russia has not reversed its decision to annex Crimea, and since Russia keeps sort of participating, if you wish, in the conflict in the eastern Ukraine, the sanctions have not succeeded. I would argue that the sanctions have had quite remarkable success. First of all, the fact that the European Union and our transatlantic friends and allies acted quite so quickly and quite so strongly was definitely a huge surprise to Putin when he first launched the aggression, and definitely it is fair, I think, a fair assessment that the original the goals or objectives of Putin's regime were not limited to Crimea and those two oblasts in the eastern part of Ukraine. And I think that the fact that the transatlantic community or the international community took quite so principled and united stand against that aggression had very strong effect on actually keeping Putin from going much further. And indeed, I believe that the sanctions, particularly the ones that have to do with the financial sanctions and those that have to do with the export regulations regarding certain technologies, that they have had a very significant effect on Russia's ability to go on with its rearmament and modernization effort of its military and have kept it from actually launching even more aggressive steps against Ukraine, potentially against other neighbors. And so I think that I very much agree that the international community will have to stay firm when it comes to the non-recognition policy of the illegal annexation of Crimea, and also that Russia knows well what it has to do to actually fully implement its part of the Minsk agreement, and as long as it is not ready to do so, we as international community, we as European Union will have to stay firm and maintain the sanctions regime, or those sanctions that have to do with Russia's activities in the east part of Ukraine.
Nii, aitäh. Sorry for some technicalities, but our microphone is fixed now, so you can still use Estonian as well. And the second question.
Thank you. Ingrid Semba-Hõbemägi, Channel 2 News, Estonia. I have a question for Federica Mogherini. You just mentioned those challenges and what's ahead of us. And one of the topic is EU and Turkey. And do you see any possibilities that there will be a new wave of immigrants towards EU? And the second part of question is, as we heard today, that Slovakia and Hungary, they have not agreed to implement the quotas of refugees and not to accept them. So the question is, do we have a plan with Turkey? And the second part of the question is, how do you react with those sayings from the Slovakia and Hungarian side? Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, let me say very clearly, our relation with Turkey goes well beyond the issue of the Syrian refugees. Turkey is a candidate country. Turkey is a big and relevant player in the region, having a key role when it comes to the war in Syria, when it comes to solving the Cyprus issue, when it comes to our economic or energy relations, when it comes to our relations with the people of Turkey, all of them. So I've always considered a limit to see our relations with Turkey only through the angle of how to manage the refugee crisis. That, first of all, is a crisis for the refugees. We assume always the European perspective that we have lived a refugee crisis. Let me tell you that countries like Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world, host 700,000 refugees, with an economy that is not comparable to any of the economies of any of the European Union member states. And the same can go for most of the African or Asian countries. This to say, and not to mention the fact that Jordan or Lebanon or Turkey themselves host millions of refugees. So I would like us to be rational on this and recognize that our support to Turkey in their efforts to host refugees in a decent manner, for instance, giving education to the Syrian children, is an investment in our own future, and it's an investment in the future of Syria and in the stability of the region. And that this is not the only issue we have on the table with Turkey. Actually, it's now not even the most relevant. As the major wave of migrants, as you put it, and I would like us to make a clear distinction between the refugees and the migrants. It's two different things. But the large number of migrants in this moment are coming through Libya to Italy, so it's not a Turkish route. And on this will be essential the work we are doing with Africa, including the Africa Summit we will have during the Estonian presidency. When it comes to And by the way, I often say, I know this is not always popular in the European Union, but I often say that as we have to manage the migration flows, including preventing irregular migration flows to the European Union, we also have to recognize the positive value of migration, including for some sectors of our economy. There are some sectors of the European economy that would not survive one single day if all the migrants were to disappear tomorrow from the European territory. And I think we have to acknowledge this. Also being a land that has experienced migration or emigration in the last century, and even in the last couple of decades. This is the same thing we should keep in mind talking about internal solidarity. One of the things that will come to the presidency table, not on the external angle, so it's not our file, will also be how we manage effective solidarity among member states. This is not our direct institutional competence, but I can tell you very openly, we will need to find a way to share responsibility also when it comes to hosting and protecting refugees inside the European Union. If we continue to believe or to live in the illusion that the countries of first arrival of refugees, being them Italy or Greece, or tomorrow Estonia or Latvia, you don't know where the next refugee flow will come from, you avoid seeing the reality, which is that people don't come to one country or another, they come to Europe. And as a union, we have to take responsibility and share responsibility, and this will make things sustainable. There is no such a big number that would put in danger either the economies or the culture of any of our member states. All of this is manageable and feasible if we do it together. It becomes a serious problem if it's only one member state, even the bigger one, having to face something like this alone. The strength we have is that we are together. And as in a family, if one member of the family is facing a difficulty, the others come and help. This is true for refugee crisis, this is true for economic support, this is true for all other issues. We help each other. This is the basis of the European solidarity, this is the basis of being a union, and I believe we will have to find a practical, sustainable, rational manner to continue to help each other or to start to help each other in some of the issues we're doing.
But possibility of new wave of refugees?
Of refugees.
Yeah.
So you're distinguishing from refugees, of Syrian refugees.
Yeah, immigrants, refugees, whatever.
No, it's a different thing. You know, it's a...
threatened to open the borders.
It's a very different thing. It's different from legal terms, and it's different from routes of origin and countries of origin and transit. The flow of migrants in these months is still very much relevant. The flow of refugees, of Syrian refugees from Turkey, is in this moment not so relevant. So when you look at the complete number, it's still a relevant one, but it's a different kind of wave and it's taking a different route. It's not Syrians, it's mainly sub-Saharan Africans coming, and it's not through Turkey, but it's through Libya. So it's a different route, it's a different kind of phenomenon that has to be tackled with a different instrument. And if you're asking me about the waves of migrants that are coming to Europe, which means through Libya to Italy in this moment, I can tell you that the way in which we're handling this, thanks also to a very good work we've done with the foreign ministers of the all 28 member states, is with a presence at sea. The European Union has a military mission at sea in the Mediterranean. At the same time, dismantling the traffickers' network, having arrested more than 100 smugglers, seizing the boats that are used, saving lives, tens of thousands of people we've saved, but also training the Libyan Coast Guards so that they can take care of the dismantling of the smuggling networks in the Libyan territorial waters. And we're doing other two things to prevent, first of all, the losses of lives, but also the flourishing of the trafficking of people. Inside Libya, we are financing the presence of the International Organization for Migrations and the UNHCR so that they can have access to the detention centers where people live in awful conditions, save these people, protect these people, but also organizing voluntary returns to their countries of origin. And also we're working with the countries of origin and transit, in particular Niger, where more than 80% of the flow transit. And I can tell you one number that will strike you probably. In the last 9 months, through our action with Niger, we moved from 76,000 migrants passing through Niger into Libya to 6,000, from 76 to 6,000. This to say that it's through partnership, through cooperation with our African partners, that we are managing the flows, we are dismantling the traffickers' networks, we are saving lives, and we are reaccompanying on a voluntary basis with the UN agencies, doing things with the right international human rights standards so that people are protected and the irregular channels are closed. But at the same time, we also have to work on the regular channels of mobility. This is the work we're doing on the current waves we are facing. Thank you.
To give an opportunity to ask questions from Federica, I won't make a lengthy comment on that one.
Aga kahjuks on nüüd nii, et meie aeg ongi läbi saanud. So unfortunately we have run out of time for questions. Or, okay. No,
Guo Chunji from China's Xinhua News Agency. My question goes from both Minister Mikser and High Representative Mogherini. As the West is meeting today to find out the solutions to the challenges it is facing now, how do you think of China's Belt and Road Initiative as an effective option for international cooperation to solve the problems the West is facing? Thank you.
I was in Beijing myself a couple of weeks ago. I discussed this. I had the chance to discuss this as well as our bilateral cooperation between the European Union and China with the Premier and with all my interlocutors there. And we are preparing in a very positive manner the next EU-China summit that will take place in Brussels at the beginning of June. We see the One Belt, One Road initiative as a positive initiative. Vice President Katainen is at the summit, at the forum in these days. We believe this has to be developed, first of all, following international norms, second, allowing the non-Chinese enterprises to take also part to the projects, and in a good neighborly spirit. We think connections and developing connections between Asia and Europe is definitely something positive that will benefit both Asia and Europe. It has to be done in the right manner. I think we can do it. And in general terms, I would like to add that my visit to Beijing was a real success, and our cooperation is really based on, I think, now extremely solid basis. I think China and the European Union recognized each other in this period of the history of the world as two reliable global powers. We don't always agree on everything, but we recognized each other's added value.
Well, there's actually very little left for me to add. I believe that there's a huge potential in building closer connections, in doing business, in creating opportunity for doing business and trade. It has to be done in a way that actually benefits everyone and doesn't exclude anyone. I think it is entirely possible. We should move ahead in a way that is actually in accordance with the international norms and standards.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. Thank you to our guests. Thank you. Aitäh.